All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're tearing down the hype around the incredibly popular BRRRR real estate investing method. It's a strategy that gets talked about constantly, but we're going to look past the buzzwords today. We're relying on a straightforward expert FAQ from mortgage advisor Trent Hufstetler to figure out exactly how the mechanics work, how on earth it's financed, and what the genuine real-world risks are.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll quickly define what the BRRRR method actually is, then we're going to cover finding the right property, financing that initial purchase, executing the refinance strategy, and finally, getting real about the risks.
So part 1. What is the BRRRR method, and what does the life cycle of this strategy actually look like?
Look, we hear this acronym all the time, right? But before we pick apart its moving pieces, we need to define it. At its core, this is a strategy where you buy a property, fix it up, rent it out, refinance it based on its new updated value, and then, here's the kicker, use those funds for the next property. It's a continuous cycle designed to scale your portfolio. You're not just sitting on a house, and you're definitely not flipping it to sell to someone else. The ultimate goal is to pull those available funds right back out to fuel your next investment.
And that brings us right to the acronym itself. Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. It lays out the exact physical steps you'd take on a hypothetical investment. Sounds like a perfect, simple loop of wealth generation on paper, doesn't it? But as we'll see, each one of these 5 steps is basically a massive gatekeeper. Trip up on step 2, and well, you're never getting to step 4.
Moving on to part 2, finding the right property. This is your absolute foundation for success.
You can't just hop on the market, buy any random house, and expect this to work. You need a highly specific cocktail of criteria to even get this thing off the ground. We're talking about a property purchased well below market value that has serious renovation potential. But that's only half the battle. You also need to be in an area with solid rental demand, or you're just rehabbing a ghost town. But really pay attention to this final point. You absolutely must have comparable sales in the area to support your expected after-repair value, or ARV. If the houses down the street aren't pulling top dollar, it doesn't matter how beautiful your renovation is, the appraisal won't match your expectations, and the whole strategy just collapses.
Okay, part 3, financing the initial purchase, or how you actually fund this short-term reality.
So you found the perfect distressed property. Awesome! But how does an investor actually pay for it and the rehab before a stable renter is in place? A traditional bank is probably going to laugh you out the door if you ask for a standard mortgage on a house stripped down to the studs. So investors usually pivot to these short-term funding options. We're talking cold hard cash, hard money lenders, private financing, or specialized renovation loans. These are essentially your financial bridge to get you from that buy phase all the way through the rehab phase.
And as Trent Hufstetler points out, there is absolutely no one-size-fits-all magic bullet here. The best option? It entirely depends on the property itself, how crazy your renovation scope is, and your own personal financial profile. A fresh coat of paint and some new floors require a totally different funding path than, say, a massive structural overhaul. Your financials act as the ultimate deciding factor on which of those short-term levers you can actually pull.
Which brings us to part 4, the refinance strategy. This is the crucial pivot point. This is the moment of truth. The whole concept either works right here or it totally stalls out. A massive misconception is that you can just flip a switch and refinance whenever you want. You can't just refinance on day 1. You are totally at the mercy of several timeline factors. Lenders often have seasoning requirements, meaning they might make you own the property for a certain number of months before they even look at you. Plus, renovations have to be 100% complete. You generally have to establish the property's occupancy status by getting a renter in, and you have to play by the rules of the specific loan program you're using. You gotta understand these rules before you ever close on the purchase.
And that leads us to the million-dollar question, right? The biggest hype around this strategy. Can you actually recover every single dollar you originally put into the deal?
Well, let's take a breath, because here's the harsh reality. Hufstetler is explicitly clear about this. Recovering everything is possible, but it is absolutely 100% not guaranteed. It's a best-case scenario, folks, not a built-in feature of the system.
Think of your final cash out as a strict mathematical equation. It heavily depends on that new completed appraised value. But even with an amazing appraisal, you are bound by the lender's maximum loan-to-value ratio. They aren't going to just hand over full market value for the property. Then you've got to subtract your closing costs. Whatever is left in that bucket has to cover your total purchase and renovation expenses. If your reno ran high or the appraisal came in low, you are simply not pulling all your original money back out. Let's move into Part 5, Understanding the Risks. Time for a grounded reality check.
Because those financial dependencies are so strict, we really need to look at what can go wrong. These are the hurdles that will literally break the BRRRR cycle. I mean, what happens if your renovation costs just explode way past your budget? Or worse, that critical post-rehab appraisal comes in significantly lower than expected. You might hit agonizing delays trying to find a tenant, or you realize the local market only supports an insufficient rental income that doesn't even cover your shiny new mortgage. And the ultimate nightmare? The complete inability to qualify for that planned refinance at all. Any one of these things hits, and you might find yourself trapped in a high-interest short-term loan with zero clear way out.
So that brings us to our conclusion, planning your exit.
Let's tie this all together and understand why your endgame matters from day one. Look at this quote from Trent Hufstetler. He says, "The refinance is what allows the investor to potentially recover and reuse part of their original capital." That really drives the whole philosophy home. The refinance is the linchpin. Without a realistic bulletproof plan for this specific step, you can end up leaving way more of your own cash trapped inside that property than you ever planned for, bringing your investment journey to a grinding halt.
So before you dive headfirst into this method, you have to ask yourself the hard question. Based on everything we just broke down, the tricky market values, the bloated rehab costs, the lender seasoning periods, and those strict loan-to-value limits, do you genuinely have a solid, realistic refinance plan ready before you even buy the property? Seriously, if you don't know exactly how you're getting out, you probably shouldn't be getting in. With the incredibly high stakes of strict appraisals and wild renovations, is the BRRRR method a brilliant wealth builder or just a really fast track to trapping your cash? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.